Aita for refusing to babysit my nephew after my sister left him with me without asking? To give a little context, I'm the youngest in my family, and growing up with my sister has always been an interesting experience, to say the least. My sister, let's call her Anna, is 5 years older than me, and ever since I can remember, we've had a pretty up and down relationship. I suppose that's common in sibling relationships, especially when one sibling is older and used to being the center of attention before a new baby comes along. For as long as I can remember, Anna has always been headstrong, independent, and a little bit stubborn. She was the type of person who would figure things out her own way, sometimes without asking for help even if she needed it. As the younger sibling, I often admired her strength and determination. But at times, her actions also made me feel like she didn't value my boundaries or opinions, and that tension would show up in our relationship over the years. Growing up, I can recall many times when Anna's determination to do things her way would clash with my own need for space or independence. Whether it was her borrowing my things without asking, deciding how our shared room should be organized, or pushing me into activities I didn't want to do, it was always a bit of a power struggle between us. But family is family, and for the most part, we try to get along. Fast forward to adulthood, and our lives went in pretty different directions. I focused on my career and building a stable, independent life for myself. I've always been a planner. I like knowing what my days will look like, and I value my free time. Anna, on the other hand, has had a bit of a rougher go. She got married young, had my nephew, who, for privacy, I'll call Jake, and went through a messy divorce when Jake was only 2 years old. Since then, she's been raising him as a single mom. Don't get me wrong, I admire how hard Anna has worked to support Jake on her own. Being a single parent is an incredibly tough job, and I can't even imagine how difficult it's been for her. Over the years, I've tried to be as supportive as possible. I love Jake to pieces. He's a sweet, energetic little boy, and he brings a lot of joy into our family. But as much as I love him, I've always tried to maintain boundaries when it comes to helping out. After all, I have a life of my own. The real conflict started about 6 months ago when Anna began leaning on me more and more for help with Jake. It started with small things, picking him up from school once in a while, watching him for a couple of hours here and there. At first, I didn't mind. I understood that being a single mom meant Anna didn't have a lot of backup, and I was happy to help out when I could. But slowly, those small favors started becoming more frequent. Anna would call me last minute, asking if I could take Jake because she had errands to run or something came up at work. Sometimes, she wouldn't even ask, she would just drop him off, assuming I'd be free to take care of him. At first, I tried to be flexible. I understood that life as a single parent isn't predictable, and there are times when you need help. But over time, it started to wear on me. I had my own job, my own commitments, and my own plans. I'm not a full-time babysitter, and I never signed up to be one. What bothered me the most was the lack of respect for my time. Anna just seemed to assume that I'd be available whenever she needed me, and she never really asked how it impacted my life. The breaking point came last weekend. It was a Saturday morning, and I had plans to meet up with a close friend who I hadn't seen in months. We had a whole day planned, brunch, some shopping, and just catching up. It was something I'd been looking forward to all week. That morning, Anna called me. As soon as I saw her name on the screen, I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew what she was going to ask. Sure enough, she asked if I could watch Jake for a few hours because she had some errands to run. I told her that I had plans and wouldn't be able to watch him that day. I could hear the frustration in her voice, but she didn't argue much. She just said, "Okay, I'll figure something out," and hung up. I felt a little guilty, but I also knew that I needed to stick to my boundaries. After all, I deserved to have my own life, too. About an hour later, I was getting ready to leave when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was surprised. When I opened the door, there was Anna, standing there with Jake and a bag of his things in hand. Before I could even say anything, she said, "I'll be back in a few hours, thanks so much," and just walked off. I was stunned. She didn't wait for me to respond, didn't ask if I was okay with it, she just dumped her kid on me and left. I looked down at Jake, who was standing there looking a little confused. He didn't understand what was going on, and honestly, neither did I. I could feel a wave of frustration and anger building inside of me. I had told her I wasn't available, but she completely disregarded that and decided that her needs were more important than mine. At that moment, I had a choice. I could either call her back and demand she return, which would probably upset Jake and create a whole scene, or I could cancel my plans and take care of him. I chose the latter, not because I felt it was the right thing to do, but because I didn't want to upset Jake. He's a sweet kid, and none of this was his fault. but the whole situation left a bitter taste in my mouth. So, I cancelled my plans and spent the next several hours watching Jake. We played some games, watched a movie, and had lunch, but the whole time I couldn't shake the feeling of resentment. I kept replaying the scene in my head, how Anna just showed up unannounced and left without a second thought. It felt like she had no respect for me or my time, and it wasn't the first time something like this had happened. When Anna finally came back hours later, I was still fuming. She waltzed in like nothing had happened, thanking me for watching Jake and talking about how much she had gotten done. I didn't want to explode in front of Jake, so I waited until he was out of the room before confronting her. "I told you I wasn't available today," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Anna looked at me with a mix of confusion and annoyance. "Yeah, but you weren't doing anything that important, right? It's just brunch with a friend." I could feel my blood boiling. "It doesn't matter what I was doing, Anna. You didn't ask, you just dropped him off and left. That's not okay." She rolled her eyes and shrugged. "I needed help, and you're his aunt. Family helps each other out." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm happy to help when I can, but you can't just assume I'm available whenever you need me. You didn't even ask this time, you just dumped him here. That's not fair to me." Anna crossed her arms and looked defensive. "I'm a single mom, and I don't always have time to plan everything perfectly. Sometimes I need help at the last minute. You don't understand what it's like." "I get that being a single mom is hard," I said, my voice rising a little, "but that doesn't mean you can ignore my boundaries. I have a life, too." At this point, Anna was visibly upset. "So, what are you saying? That you're done helping me? That you don't care about Jake?" "No," I said, frustrated, "I'm saying that you need to respect my time and ask before you drop him off. I'm not saying I won't help, but I need you to communicate with me and not just assume I'll be free." Anna stared at me for a moment, her face a mix of anger and hurt. "Fine," she said sharply. "I won't ask you for help anymore." With that, she grabbed Jake's bag and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, feeling a mix of guilt and anger. I didn't want it to come to this, but I also felt like I had to stand up for myself. Over the next few days, the fallout from the incident spread through our family. Anna told my parents what had happened, and they were divided in their opinions. My mom was on my side, saying that Anna had overstepped and needed to respect my boundaries. But my dad took a different view. He thought I should have been more understanding and that, as family, we should always help each other out, especially given that Anna was a single mom. Some of our extended family got wind of the situation, too, and of course, opinions flew in from every direction. Some agreed with me, saying that it wasn't fair for Anna to dump Jake on me without notice. They believed that while families should help each other, there still needed to be mutual respect and communication. Others sided with Anna, insisting that single parenting is exhausting and unpredictable, and that I should have been more flexible given her circumstances. They pointed out that she doesn't have much of a support system and that I should have cut her some slack. I started to feel torn. Part of me understood that Anna had a lot on her plate and that it wasn't easy for her to juggle everything by herself. But the other part of me felt taken advantage of. It wasn't about Jake, I love him and love spending time with him, but rather the way Anna had handled the situation, as if my life and time didn't matter. I had always been supportive, but this time it felt like she was using that support as a crutch, assuming that I'd always be there at her convenience without so much as a proper request. After a few days of stewing over it, I decided to reach out to Anna. I didn't want this incident to turn into a permanent rift between us. I knew she was hurt, and honestly, I was too. But I figured it was time for a conversation where we could both get our feelings out, rather than leaving things unresolved and festering. I texted her asking if we could talk. It took a few hours, but eventually, she agreed. I invited her over to my place so we could chat without distractions, and a few evenings later, she came by after putting Jake to bed. The atmosphere was tense when she walked in. We both sat down, and for a minute, neither of us spoke. I could tell she was still upset, and I wasn't sure how to start. Eventually, I broke the silence. "Anna," I began, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened last weekend. I don't want us to be mad at each other over this, but I need you to understand why I was upset." She sighed, looking down at her hands. "I know why you were upset. I guess I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. You're always so good with Jake, and I didn't have anyone else to turn to. I just thought you wouldn't mind as much." "I don't mind helping you, Anna," I said softly. "I love Jake, and I know how much you've been through. But when you drop him off without asking, it feels like you don't respect my time. I had plans that day. They might not have seemed important to you, but they were important to me." She nodded, still not looking at me. I know I've been asking for a lot of help lately. I didn't realize how much I've been leaning on you. It's just, after the divorce, it's been so hard, and sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. I don't want to admit that I'm struggling, but I am. And you've always been there, so I didn't think about how it might affect you. Her voice cracked a little as she said the last part, and I could see how tired she was, physically and emotionally. I felt a wave of empathy wash over me. I couldn't imagine how hard it must be for her, raising Jake on her own with no consistent support system. I get that you're going through a lot, I replied gently, and I want to help. But we need to find a way to do this where both of our needs are respected. You can't just drop him off last minute without checking with me first. I'm happy to babysit if I can, but I need you to ask me in advance. I have my own life, and I need to be able to plan things. Anna finally looked up at me, her eyes red and a little puffy. You're right. I've been so focused on what I need, I didn't think about how it was affecting you. I'm sorry. Her apology caught me off guard. I had half expected her to defend herself the whole time, but hearing her acknowledge how her actions had impacted me made me realize that maybe she hadn't been aware of how out of control things had gotten. We sat in silence for a moment, and I could feel some of the tension beginning to ease. I'm not saying I'll never help you again, I clarified. I just need us to communicate better. I want to be there for you, but I also need to take care of my own life. Can we agree to try and find a balance? Anna nodded, wiping away a stray tear. Yeah, we can. I'll try to give you more notice and not just assume you're always free. I really don't want to lose your support. You're the only one I can really count on. I felt my heart soften. Despite all the frustration, she was my sister, and she had been through so much. I didn't want her to feel like she was alone in this, but I also didn't want to feel taken for granted. Look, I said, leaning forward a little, I'll help you figure out some other options, too. Maybe there are resources in the community, like a babysitting co-op or something, that you can look into for those times when you need last-minute help. We can make a plan together so you're not so stressed. She smiled faintly. That would be amazing. I didn't even think about that. I've just been trying to juggle everything, and I guess I haven't really looked for other solutions. We spent the next hour talking about ways she could build a better support network, from looking into local childcare options to talking with some of our extended family who might be willing to pitch in more regularly. As we discussed it, I could see some of the weight lifting off her shoulders. She didn't have to do this all on her own, and I didn't have to be her sole lifeline. By the time she left that night, we had come to a better understanding. The tension that had built up over the past few months seemed to have dissipated, and while I knew things wouldn't be perfect overnight, I felt hopeful that we could rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. The next time Anna needed help with Jake, she called me a few days in advance to ask if I was available. I was able to say yes, and it felt good to have that mutual respect in place. Since then, we've been working on communicating more openly, and Anna has been more mindful of my time. In the end, I don't think I was the asshole for setting boundaries. But I also learned that sometimes people are so overwhelmed by their own struggles that they forget to see how their actions affect others. Anna wasn't intentionally trying to take advantage of me, she was just overwhelmed and didn't know how to ask for help in a healthy way. By having that tough conversation, we were able to find a balance that worked for both of us. So, I guess in this case, no one's really the villain. We're all just trying to navigate life's challenges the best we can, and sometimes that means learning how to communicate and set boundaries in a way that honors both ourselves and the people we care about. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed these Reddit stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.